Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this short video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous night of the local time. We have some interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Kherson direction, where the Ukrainians continue attempts to cross Dnipro River and to establish a stable foothold on the Russian bank of the river in the village by the name of Krynki. And to tell the truth, today we were forced to adjust the map and at least to show some territory under the gray zone, because we continue receiving updates of additional Ukrainian soldiers, let's say, landed in the area. We are not saying that this part of Krynki is under Ukrainian control, but obviously there are no doubts that there are reconnaissance and sabotage groups or some kind of forces that Ukrainians usually day by day send to the area with the purpose to destroy Russian, let's say, positions, to attack them, let's say, for sabotage operation. Yes. Furthermore, we have some updates not just from the territory on the ground. We have updates from different mappers. For example, Syriac shows that entire shore, or let's say along the Krynkis, and the complete Ukrainian control not just this small part, but according to him, for example, the Ukrainians control something like this. So we can summarize saying that most likely the Russians, according to Syriac, haven't been managed to force the Ukrainians to fall back from the area. Furthermore, if we increase the numbers of updates since the beginning of May, we're gonna see a few more videos of, let's say, Ukraine attempts to cross Dnipro River and to land their infantry there. This is another video that we discussed a few days ago, how the Ukrainians managed to land and 4 or 5 soldiers, let's say, entered the territory as well. So for now, we have no doubts that there is a presence of Ukrainian forces in Krynki, and most likely during May and June they will try to improve their positions before possible greatest another Ukrainian offensive operation on this direction. And I'll remind you that if we increase the numbers of this since the beginning of April, we're going to see a significant number of FPV drone strikes of armored forces of Ukraine on this direction, and not just here but also in the southern part along the, let's say, along the entire Dnipro River. We see a certain Ukrainian activity. The Russians mainly are using the, let's say, missiles and, let's say, fab bombs and so on. But when talking about something new, the Russians decided also to follow the Ukrainians, and starting of this year, might be the May and April, the Russians also start using FPV drones against the Ukrainian forces in the towns like Kazatska, Berislav, Novoberislav, because they understand that the FABs and missiles is not enough to slow down the Ukrainians. Also, it's good to use FPV drones, and furthermore, I expect that if the Russians want to solve the issue with the Dnipro River completely, furthermore, sooner or later they will be forced to do the same as Ukrainians. They will be forced to start sending reconnaissance and sabotage groups on the Ukrainian bank of the river and to do the same as Ukrainians do right now. So this is the only, let's say, way how the Russians can secure the territory, and this is the way to send the forces on the Ukrainian bank of the river. Now we're moving further to Robotina. We have some updates. We have few videos. The Russians continue FPV droning the Ukrainians along the main supply roads on the direction, and we have additional videos of how the Russians captured a few more ruins, few more buildings, using the motorcycle stormtroopers. On this video we can see my bike and the Russian soldiers, 2 Russian soldiers on bike, were heading towards Robotina under very heavy Ukrainian artillery fire, but the guys managed to survive under the few artillery or mortar strikes and to answer some, let's say, buildings inside of Robotina. So this is the situation. Now we're moving to Vremivka tactical bridgehead. We have just one video. The Russians probably during the 3rd or 4th strike in a row managed to destroy completely the bridge, because as you can see, some part of the bridge was already destroyed, but there was still way how to use the bridge by the Ukrainians, and they were using the bridge. And today we got the final confirmation that the Russians destroyed the bridge completely, or maybe damaged once again. Anyway, the Russians are trying to reduce the Ukrainian supply and support capabilities on the direction with the purpose to reduce the Ukrainian resistance in Rozhaina and Staromayorska. Ugledar direction, we continue receiving updates of how the Russians continue clearing the area in the vicinity of the farms on the Ukrainian bank of Kashlygach River. Additional strikes, additional FPV drone attacks on Ukrainian positions in the vicinity of Ugledar. So the Russians continue clearing, the Ukrainians continue trying to save their presence there. But anyway, this is another video of preparation before the, let's say, final grand operation in Ugledar. Novomikhailivka, Konstantinovka, Paraskovivka. Today we got additional information that just today the first Russian squads managed to enter Paraskovivka itself and to capture and to establish control over a few buildings. This is the first important update, and the second one is that we continue following the official Telegram channel of the 79th Air Assault Brigade, who's responsible for the protection of Konstantinovka and Paraskovivka, and we see every day more and more panic among their personnel. They're saying that there is no supply support, no additional reinforcements. They're saying that if the situations continue developing the same way, obviously they're going to be very difficult for them. The Russians are pushing all the day, every day, and according to them, the main Russian goal is to reach as close as possible to the 0524 road and to cut the road physically. And furthermore, the sources reported about continuous clashes in Pobeda, and the 79th Brigade stated that Pobeda is not completely under Russian control. We see few videos of counter-artillery duels successful that ended in Russian favor. Few artillery systems, D-20, D-30 howitzers were destroyed. The Russians also trying to clear the way before finishing with Pobeda and then moving further to Konstantinovka itself. So this is the situation on the area. So after a very short operational pause, we see that every single day the clashes in this area are intensifying and intensifying and intensifying. Now we're moving to Krasnogorovka. As we discussed yesterday, the Russians, as a result of very heavy clashes, established complete control over the central industrial zone. Most likely, the Ukrainians already thinking how to withdraw their positions, soon to run away, of course. Zelensky and his commander thinks how to force them to fight till the last, point of blood. The officers are thinking how to solve the issue between the, generals and the soldiers on the ground. And the soldiers on the ground, of course, start thinking how to run away from this area and how to save their lives. Mostly these thoughts are coming to the Ukrainians who are located in the eastern part in the high-rise building, because the Russians need just to move further a little bit to the north, like 1-2 kilometers to the north, and to answer the low-rise residential area of this part. And after that, there are going to be no problems or almost no resistance from the Ukrainian side, and basically the risks of being encircled by the Russians will be increased significantly for the Ukrainians. Now we're moving to Nivoyska, and we have the most important update. As we discussed in the previous video, we were talking about this cauldron that possible the Russians managed to encircle significant number of Ukrainians. We have additional update from Deep State that the Russians managed to improve their positions a little bit, but today we got the final confirmation that yes, most likely the Ukrainians managed to return control over the village by the name of Nivoyska, and this is the reason why the Ukrainians still control the territory and still haven't decided to fall back from the area completely. We have one video of how the Russians were bombing the Ukrainians. We have 100% confirmation of Ukrainian presence there. We continue receiving additional updates from Nitailova. Just yesterday, we talked that the Russians entered and reached the main road, the central road that goes from Nitailova to Yasnobrodovka. And today, we got the report that the Russians managed to cross the road and almost reach the, western northwestern outskirts of the village. So most likely today, tomorrow, or the day after, the Russians are going to establish complete control over the village. And now we're moving further to Orlovka. We have just few improvements by different mappers. The Russians, by Deep State, according to Deep State, improved and got very close to the main defense belt that lays between Orlovka and further to the west in direction of Umanska. So the clashes are going to take place for this stronghold with the forces of the 25th Airborne Brigade. The Russians, according to mappers, managed to improve their positions closer and further to Novoselovka Persha and the village by the name of Novopokrovska. So additional fields were captured by the Russians, according to different sources. So for now, we haven't received geolocations, but most likely there is no doubts about this. We have additional progress in the, not progress, but confirmations. The Russians also published the video of control in the village by the name of Keramik. We see the Russian soldier who was raising the flag in the most northwestern part of the village. The flag confirmation. Yesterday we discussed that the Russians established control over the village by the name name of Arkhangelska with the same flag. Today, just another confirmation that, to tell the truth, there is no need for this, but for archive is good to have. Of course, Arkhangelska, different mappers continue confirmation of Russian control, and of course, the mappers continue confirmation control over the fields between the village, the town by the name of Очеретина, Nova Alexandrovka, and the village by the name of Arkhangelska. So now, according to different mappers, this is approximately the Russian territory of control, and this is very important because based on this information, we can make a conclusion that the Russians also established control over this main stronghold. And now the Russians have a very good background for further offensive to the north, to the west, and in many other directions. Chasiv Yar. The sources continue reporting about very heavy clashes inside of the, let's say, eastern part. The sources reported the Russians entered the village, the residential area, this one. There were a few FPV drone strikes published by the Russians, so there were very heavy clashes, but yet we haven't received even a single geolocated confirmation of the presence of the Russian soldier inside of the eastern part. So 4 days before the Victory Day, we'll see whether the Russians are able to capture at least the eastern part, but now we understand that most likely the Russians aren't going to do this. We have additional updates confirming that the main supply roads were destroyed by the Russians, and not just destroyed but also blocked by damaged and abandoned vehicles that Ukrainians were using to repair the roads. So the situation is complicated either for the Russians and for the Ukrainians, obviously. We have some confirmations that's telling us that most likely the Russians still haven't managed to establish control over the entire bank of Seversky Donetsk-Donbass River to the south of the eastern part of Chasiv Yar, because we received additional videos of how the Russians were bombing and attacking this territory with flamethrower systems. So most likely we can see the correct configuration of the line of combat contact on this direction. We see additional activization of Russians in Klishevka, a few more videos showing the Russian attempts to storm the area and to clear the first buildings from Ukrainians. Most likely the Russians managed to do this, so the Russians are pushing or began pushing on this direction as well. Sever's direction, we haven't received anything important, just interesting video from Bilogorovka. On this video, which is very important, we can see the Ukrainian strongholds, the Ukrainian fortifications, shelters on the hill. The Russians discovered another machine gun position of armored forces of Ukraine as a result of artillery strike. That machine gun position was destroyed by the Russian forces. So if we increase the numbers of updates, at least since the beginning of May, we see that the Russians are very focused, and this territory, as we just saw in the video, let's say located on the hill, and from this hill with machine gun positions, anti-tank positions, the Ukrainians are trying to control the territories and fields to the south. Now the Russians try to suppress them, and as soon as the Russians continue clearing operation of this territory, most likely we're going to see additional attempts from the Russian side to attack on this area with the purpose to encircle Bilogorovka from the southwest. Okay, now we're moving further. We're moving to Kupinsk area, where we also received some updates during the previous night. Most of them are about the confirmation of Russian control over Kislovka-Kotlarovka. We have the video of more precisely the map updates of different reliable sources. Syriac Deep State confirms. We have also the video with the flamethrower strikes in the central part of Kislovka, where there are still very heavy clashes. This video confirms that the most western part of the village still under Ukrainian control, and there are still a lot of job to do for the Russians. But anyway, regarding the difficulties, most likely the Russians will capture the village very soon. Furthermore, the Russian sources published very interesting footage of Ivanovka, the village that located to the north of Kislovka-Kotlarovka. The Russians were conducting reconnaissance operation, trying to understand what exactly is happening there, trying to find Ukrainian anti-tank positions, drone positions, and many other different things, infrastructure, military. This is like reconnaissance operation before the final push. This like Ivanovka, and we need to expect the activations of clashes on this direction as well. Most likely the Russians are about to launch the final ground offensive operation, and then they will capture, and after that they will move further to Stepova, Novoselko. So the clashes in this area, so we are just at the beginning of something very big on the direction, on the Kupinsk direction. Now we are moving to Kharkiv area. The Russians continue pummeling and destroying the Ukrainian positions with Iskanders. Few more arrivals were during the previous night, and very interesting video we got today from Alexandrovka. On this video we can see the Russians discovered the concentration of Ukrainian forces somewhere along the tree lines, few trucks, few light vehicles, some artillery systems, most likely FPV drone positions, some armored vehicles. The Russians discovered everything, provided necessary information to the necessary forces, and after that the Russians strike this area with Tornado S or Iskander, and as a result of the strike, the Ukrainians most likely had significant losses. So more and more convoys, more and more concentration of forces under very heavy fire, and as we discussed, the Russians are preparing for a new stage in the advance of their troops. Most likely it will be in the Kharkiv directions, deputy commander of the 3rd Brigade of Ukraine stated. And of course, Kiev reports, Kiev updates. Kiev may request the dispatch of European troops to Ukraine if its own forces are insufficient, said Ukrainian Rada Deputy Goncharenko in an interview with French media. Yes, this might happen, but only before the 21st of May, until the Ukrainians, Zelensky has any power, legal power in the area. So the situation is very difficult. In front of us, the big holidays. Today is the very holiday, the Easter, Orthodox Easter, and maybe we will not see lots of updates for today, because it's like I believe that this is silent, not ceasefire, but reduce of any activity, and after that there's going to be another short pause. Maybe the Russians during the next few days will try to establish control Krasnogorovka, many other different towns, and after the 9th of May we're going to see something very big, and something very big. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day.